Hey everybody, it's Joe from greenlightsound.com, and today we've got another tip courtesy of Michael Brauer, taking his hardware options that he used to use and putting them in the box. This is a plug-in chain that mimics his Roland Dimension D for vocal width, but it's got a few extra plugins added in because Michael Brauer says that the UAD Dimension D doesn't quite match the actual hardware, and depending on what Widener you might have, this may work for you too as well. So the first thing I want to do is hear just a vocal part, completely dry, no widening on it at all.
And I thought it would stop if I bled out all the blood I've got.
So in a full mix, you might want to add some width to that, and we can use Michael Brauer's setup to do that. First of all, what he's got going first plugin-wise is a gain or trim tool. In Studio One, it's called Mix Tool. It's trim in Pro Tools. He adds 12 dB of gain into the first plugin. And then later on in the chain, another mix tool, which adds 3.5 more dB of gain into the plugin. I'll show you where they are in the chain. You may want to use them. His explanation is that allows the return channel to have the gain that he wants coming back that he's used to on the hardware console he used. So the first plugin you'll use, if you're going to do the exact Michael Brauer way, is some kind of trim plugin, mix tool, whatever, adding 12 dB of gain. I'm going to bypass it because I'm not going to use it. The second plugin in the chain is the PSP Vintage Warmer. Michael Brauer explains that the Dimension D had some kind of grit and warmth to it that the plugin version doesn't have. So this helps add that back. And there's really only two controls being used beyond what stock default setup is. And that's the knee being pushed up about here right below 30 and the drive about +8 or so. And that you can mess with that to get the warmth you'd like, but that's around where Michael Brauer has them on the PSP Vintage Warmer too. The next plugin in the chain is the actual Dimension D, Roland Dimension D for UAD. It's the Studio D, they call it. You may have another plugin version of this. One unique thing about how he sets it up is he uses both 1 and 4 buttons engaged at the same time, which you can just shift click on 4 and add it to the 1 and get them both pushed down like that. That's the sound he wants. The next plugin in the chain is another mix tool. Like I said in the beginning, this one has 3.5 dB of gain. If you want to try that out, go for it, but I bypassed it. We don't need that much gain in this mix. And then the final plugin in the chain, Michael Brauer says there's not quite as much width on the Dimension D plugin as in the hardware unit, so it's just a Waves S1 stereo shuffler to open it up a little bit more. And this is completely stock settings here, not one knob or slider messed with. Just adds the tiniest bit more width to it. So to hear how this sounds, what I'd like to do first is bypass all the extra plugins. I'm going to get rid of everything else except the Dimension D and hear how that sounds if you were just going to put this plugin on by itself. I'll play the vocal and I'll write up this fader as it plays.
And I thought it would stop if I bled out all the blood I've got.
You do get some width from that, but here it is with all the other plugins engaged. We'll get the PSP Vintage Warmer back in and the S1 back in from Waves. Remember, we're leaving those two gain plugins off. So we got the Vintage Warmer, the Dimension D, and the S1. I'll put the Dimension D back on the screen and I'll fade this one back in.
And I thought it would stop if I bled out all the blood I've got.
Definitely a difference there. So again, here's without the PSP and the S1.
And I thought it would stop if I bled out all the blood I've got.
And with the PSP and S1.
And I thought it would stop if I bled out all the blood I've got.
If I put the two mix tools in, just so you see what happens here, I'm going to bring the fader all the way down.
And I thought it would stop if I bled out all the blood I've got.
That's going above 0 dB on the channel, but it might not actually clip the mix. So if you bring that fader down,
and I thought it would stop if
you might like that tone of really being pushed into it. If I bring the two mix tools out again,
and I thought it would stop if I bled out all the blood I've got.
And back in, I'll bring the fader down.
And I thought it would stop if I bled out all the blood I've got.
So there it is both ways. You might want to experiment with it depending on how your gain structure is set up in your DAW. There's definitely a little bit something more that comes of it when you push that gain into the Studio D. So there we have it, a pretty simple mix chain courtesy of Michael Brauer that's trying to mimic his hardware Roland Dimension D stereo chorus box in the DAW with a few extra plugins to really match that hardware sound. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, so we can keep you in the loop as to what's coming up next, and I'll see you in the next one.